Hi, Natalia.
Hello, Masha. How are you, darling?
I am wonderful. I'm so excited to be talking to you today.
Me too.
So, what are we talking about today?
Well, I'd like to talk about, and you and I have had a lot of discussions on our own about it, how important it is to address this sort of forgotten group of seniors, what we should be referring to as, the elders of our culture, but instead they seem to get sidelined and forgotten. And when we talk about health and wellness, it always seems to be featured toward the 18 to 55 or 60 set, and there are the people that are 65 and above who aren't really sure how to integrate what they're hearing. Some of them are trying very hard. Some of them are caught up in medical issues and already so far down the medical path, taking medications and having surgeries, and wondering maybe how they can use some of this holistic knowledge to benefit themselves and turn things around for themselves, but are a little fearful of it because it's not familiar to them, it's not familiar to their generation, and how they can integrate this, how to apply it for them. I think a lot of people who tune in to us are, have parents, they're not really sure how to navigate it with them.
Right.
So I would like to help with that. I'd like to kind of see if we can offer some really helpful guidance there and help understand this generation, this time in life, this phase of life, this really important stage of life, with a lot more clarity, because I think it's been really all muddled up.
And also, for myself, I want to learn how I can do this, aging thing as beautifully and gracefully as possible. So I would like to start now, because, every day we are getting older, and I want to learn how to really embrace it in a way that that could be beneficial to myself, to my health, to everyone around me.
Masha, in fact, I love this idea of us having a picture, a voice of our elder self that we carry with us into every moment of the day, every choice we make. Because, we're so conditioned in our society to live for the moment, to take the path of least resistance, to do the short, quick gratification as opposed to the delayed gratification, and so we think of the two as being so opposite. We need to bring them into a time frame where there isn't really no past, present, or future. There's just the moment of now, and so that moment of now is going to carry through and create that moment of now when you're 80.
Yes.
So to basically take every choice you make into consideration of that elder self.
Yes. Because I thought about something kind of trippy the other day. Is that I'm 35. I believe you and I are both around the same age. I think you had a birthday, or you have a birthday coming up.
I did, yeah.
Happy birthday.
I'm older than you, baby.
Yeah, a couple of months.
Much, but yeah.
So, and I was thinking, I don't really feel much different than when I was about 20 years old. I don't feel different. I don't feel like I know I'm a different person. I've grown. I'm wiser, or whatever it is, but I still feel it's still me in there. I'm not separated just because I'm in my 30s from the person I was in my 20s. So I could just imagine, Mosh in her 80s and feeling like I'm still 30.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what that must feel like, and I know that it probably is you don't wake up one day and see yourself as an 80-year-old woman. It's a gradual thing. I'm sure that I look very differently than I did when I was in my 20s. But I wonder what that all encompasses, knowing that other people perceive you differently.
Well, I think it's because your consciousness doesn't age.
Right.
So everything
your consciousness just gets wiser.
Yeah, hopefully it develops, but it doesn't age, it doesn't get older, it doesn't decay.
Right.
Ideally, it doesn't decay.
Yeah, no, ideally. So especially if we live in this very life-generating way, then we're not really growing older. We're growing just growing and just getting wiser and just whatever. So
it's true.
So, Go ahead.
There's a specific approach that's necessary for people when they're older, because their body's in a very different state than it is when you approach this, in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And that has everything to do with accumulation. And so accumulation of not only the physical substances that we talk so much about that we know lodge deep in the system and nest and accumulate in the intestine and the intestinal walls and then throughout the body, but also the accumulation in the bone and in the neurological system and the skeletal system collects, it accumulates experience. And that experience creates a lot of rigidity in the body because it's usually experience. It's usually not a lot of freeing, liberating kinds of experiences. It's usually a lot of stressful experiences. So all of that accumulates in the neurological and skeletal system. So there's where there's rigidity, you're going to have the opposite of youthfulness. So a couple of things to remember when we talk about this is that there is this accumulation, that as we move in opposition to nature and create so much resistance to our natural inclinations, to freedom, to joy, to expression, to creativity, and instead heed and capitulate to all of these standards and norms that are very caging, we create all this rigidity in our bodies. And that's always going to lead to decay because, as we know, calcification, stagnation becomes the decay cycle, the decomposition cycle. So that's a huge part of the negative side of aging right there. I'd like to just share a little snippet, and hopefully isn't too out there for too many of you, but when I was doing a past life regression with your mom, Masha, and I had a really extraordinary experience there where I visited went into this space of time where I was with these very, very wise, just incredibly light-filled, almost luminescent beings, and the women, the elder women of the group, were just so beautiful, and I was interacting with one of them, I was speaking with one of them, and she was. I was trying to gain the wisdom that she wanted to impart to me, and I asked her about the older generation. I said, "How is it that you are the way you are? I mean, you clearly you're the elder, but you don't look old. You just seem to be so knowledgeable, but you're vibrant, you're radiant, you're in perfect health. All your systems are flowing beautifully. You're liquid light. You're even though you're material, and I know that you have. I knew that they had bones and all of the other aspects, facets that a human being
Physical,
had.
Right.
And she said, and this really just amazed me. I never forgot this. She said, it doesn't have to be that way. She said, it doesn't, the way that the people are aging, on Earth or on Earth at this time, shall we say, isn't how it's supposed to be. And it doesn't have to be that way for people. They have to realize that this is all just a factor of how they lived, how they've been living, how they've been accumulating all this rigidity, and it can totally be released. But all these blockages of what confines us to the accumulation, to the linear time that's brought us here, have to be released too. So if anybody is if this resonates with anyone who is older, who knows somebody who's older, who they believe would have the ability to overcome these blockages, the mental limits and constraints, and get out of that paradigm and open up to this idea that they really could start liberating their body, releasing this accumulation, releasing the accumulated stress in the bones and the neurological pathways, they could turn things around in a way that we've never even seen before. And I really, even though this is something that a lot of people may think is crazy, it was so real, it was so beautiful, and it just made complete sense to me that this would be the case, especially
because it makes complete sense to me.
And we've seen how physiologically detoxification and releasing accumulation has turned things around, completely for so many people. Why shouldn't the release of all this stuff that's created the aging decline, rectify it? The release of it. So I really would love for people to hold fast to that image and that possibility, because I think that's really the only way out. Often we say, I say, colonics, we should just be grateful for them because they're the only way out. They get us out. We cannot get out of it if the illumination doesn't happen. If the blockages that are creating the problems aren't released. Well, the same thing. If we know what got us into the decay situation, we must release it. so I got very excited after coming to and being able to bring that concept with me into my waking world.
I love that. It reminds me because I was just, it's so funny that you're bringing up this like very illuminated being, because this morning I was listening to Oprah's life class, just on the web, like she does something after the life class on OWN. She has this, very deep, profound, soulful conversation, and it was Martha Beck, and she was talking about how when she went in for surgery and she was under anesthesia, she was touched by this beautiful white glowing light that was so beautiful, that made her so happy, and there were tears flowing from her eyes. And actually, when she was under, the surgeon said, "Oh my God, she's in pain. We need to increase her medication." And the anesthesiologist, some voice said to him, "She's crying because she's happy."
Wow.
And it was a very weird, surreal experience for her. But the being, or this ball of light, was basically saying, this is how you're meant to feel every day.
Yeah.
This is not some sort of like, trippy, whatever. This is the way that you're supposed to feel. This lightness, this vitality, this love, this feeling of just well-being that made her basically cry with such completeness, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. Coolness. Was what they were saying is that it's a natural state of being. So what you're describing from your past life regression is that this is really truly how we're meant to age, and this is truly how we're meant to live.
Exactly.
So we need to embrace it.
We can't. We have to remember it all the time. We need Masha whispering in our ear about how we're a ball of light. We're meant to be feeling like this at every moment. Because the second it's out of our head, we have all the competing thoughts coming in that make us rigid and take away that beauty and that feeling. I know with the pregnancy, I just keep on imagining, and your mom gave me a beautiful image of just this beautiful glowing sphere of light, in my womb and emanating out of it, and just imagining the baby in that space and feeling that, and how much of that can I maintain for the baby in its life. In her life, I'll disclose, and when she comes into the world, and that really it's something for me to devote myself to as a mother and to my other two children, because if we can keep this, if we can surround them in this and let them believe that this is really the state that they're meant to be in and the mentality to have, then how much of the world is really going to get stuck on them?
Yes.
They might still walk through the dark pathways and go to the nightclubs and go to the bars and drink and smoke and maybe do drugs and who knows what else. But if we can create a consciousness that they really are meant to live in a world that is that enlightened, then hopefully it will just it won't stick on them.
Yes.
When they have those experiences. But see,
I think that I'm actually an example of that, because I did go to the nightclubs, and I did mess around with some drugs, but all the while with an awareness that I was light and that I was more than this body. And I did all those things even if they were at 18 or 17. I did them all pretty consciously, like aware, that what I was doing was probably not the best thing for my body, but that I wanted to experience it. I wanted to do this. I did it with my eyes wide open. And I remember when my mom took me in, after she found out that I was doing drugs. I was like 16 years old, and she was horrified. She took me to the doctor, and the doctor said, there is nothing. There is no evidence that this child has done anything to her body. Nothing. Yeah. There was nothing in there. There was nothing there.
Wow. See, you could have denied it the whole time.
I could have. I mean, it would have saved me a lot of groundings, but it's a very interesting thing, and I'm not saying that anybody should do that. But yeah, kids are going to experiment and do what they need to do. But especially if we have this generation of children that are so aware and so conscious that they could still be light bringers. They could still be in the light, and they can. There's certain things that can happen. I remember my mom was just floored at what happened. So.
Yeah, exactly. Because whatever the experiences are, they're going to be negative if they walk through if they can maintain that. I really do agree with you. I believe it can not stick. So in terms of how to unravel this rigid coiling in the older person's body, mind, remember, we always have to look at it from that holographic perspective, that holistic perspective, where if there's something going on in the mind, we have to think, well, what's going on in the body? It's all like what were the emotions, what were the conditionings, what were the programs, what does this person believe, what are its primal fears, what has been within it for so long that these things developed. We always have to go back to that. So if there's a mass in the brain, if there's a blockage in the heart, it's all, we have to look at the big picture of the life of the individual's life. We cannot say, well, will juicing work for this? We have to think about, juicing is good for everybody, but that aside, how did this happen? We have to really, really deeply attune with the individual, or they must get attuned with themselves if they want to do this kind of work and really figure out what the origins are and not be afraid to look it in the eye, because there's so much. If we're talking about somebody who's in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and beyond, there's a lot of life experience that's probably lodged in there. But knowing that, from a dietetic standpoint, we need to tread very carefully and gently, because for so many reasons, really. The first is that the organs are weak. So the eliminative organs are going to be weak as well, and there's going to be so much waste matter accumulation. So that means, of course, the waste and the byproducts of that waste, but because it's been in there for so long, it's so dehydrated, there's so much of it, it's really, instead of just, we made the analogy before of detoxification, the first part of it, the awakening process is like waking up a lion in your living room. Well, this is like waking up a whole, a herd of lions, there's a whole group of lions, and not a tribe, but there's a pride of lions. I should know that. I've been on none of the safaris. Pride of lions. And so that's really what we're contending with. So we need to be extra careful. The safe things to focus on, I want to talk about food, and I want to talk about juices. So on a food front, we want to make it really vegetable-centric, and there's going to be mostly cooked vegetables, and the vegetables should be the cooked vegetables can be vegetable soups and stews. They can be pureed, blended in any way. The more blended they are, the more easily digestible they are. We want to give the digestive system a big break. Food combining is going to be another big tool to be used. Anything we can do to relieve the burden of digestion without putting things into the body that are too aggressively cleansing. So by food combining, we're just relieving the burden. We're not accelerating the cleanse by adding in very electron-rich foods that are going to create too much activity, too much how can I put it, like putting Lysol or something into or a detergent into the body. Like the raw fruits and vegetables are like the detergent. We don't want to do a lot of that, because the body needs to slowly awaken this waste, because the eliminative organs can't really get it out very well on their own at that point. So, and that brings to mind, is this person going to do colon cleansing or enemas? That's usually something that's harder for older people to get their heads around, but they need the internal hydration more than anybody else, but it has to be done very, very gently, because it's so much and it's so dry in there. I think that even though it's kind of a hard visual to take, that's what you have to understand. But we go back to that human petri dish. If we're talking about somebody who's had that many decades of accumulation, and it's going to be that dry, it's going to need that much hydration to help it out. But it may not have the same peristaltic kind of ability to help push it out. So it's something that, to know it's necessary, but to obviously want to be very gentle, keep it mild. So, and then I'll help create a day in a second. But thinking about juices should be very, very mild. Juices should be celery, cucumber, romaine, carrot. Really, really gentle. There shouldn't be dark greens in there. In the beginning, I wouldn't even put spinach in. I would go a month on just the celery, cucumber, romaine, carrot. And not too much, probably 10 to 12 ounces, working up to 16. But that's still very mild and very little compared to what we recommend for younger people. So
the darker the darker the vegetable, the more it awakens?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and the more it will break up mucus. So if somebody's lived that long and is in that kind of situation, they're going to they would have consumed a lot of mucus-forming foods. And so if you put a lot of these mucus cleansers in, the dark greens are real mucus cleansers, and the darker the green, especially dandelion and watercress, those are really mucus dissolving. And if you have the lungs to pass that and that kind of strength, great. If you don't, what's going to happen is you're going to awaken a lot of mucus that can't leave, and stuck in the passages, bacteria is going to be created, and you're going to wind up with bacterial infections, and then you need antibiotics. And then, of course, you have the vicious cycle of the antibiotics, which create the problem in the digestive system, and it becomes a mess. So you want to, slow and steady is really the best way in this case. So then the ideal scenario, and also with fruits, they including small amounts of low sugar fruits will be helpful, and cooked fruits work really well for older people. It just takes some of that the kinetic energy of the fruit out. And
like baked apples.
Exactly. Stewed prunes, that sort of thing could be really, really good. Even though I wouldn't recommend it to younger people, especially if there's yeast conditions, but in this case, it's the lesser evil. So, for example, a day in the life that would be, perfect for somebody transitioning like this would be to have their vegetable juice first, and coconut water would be great too. It'd be a nice way to gently rehydrate things. So, hydrate things. So, you could do coconut water and or the vegetable juice, and then about 30 minutes or an hour later, when something more is desired, then do some grapefruit or navel oranges. Maybe apples. You could do the cooked apples if they're desired, or some stewed prunes, something like that. And then for lunch, I would do a small salad, because you want something live in there. So a small leafy green baby romaine kind of salad with a little lemon juice, maybe a touch of olive oil or raw flax oil, cold pressed flax oil. But go easy on the oils, because there's already enough density in the body. We don't want to use too much, but a little bit will be okay. Especially, these usually they're more focused on revivification than weight loss. So it's not like they're so worried about their subcutaneous fat at this point. They're really worried about their vital organs.
Right.
And then also, by the way, people who are trying to lose weight who are older and have that much accumulation will have, oftentimes the weight loss, if they really do, if that is a primary goal for them, the body's going to triage first. So it's going to try to regenerate with this energy that you're bringing into it, and that the body's all the self-healing is going to begin in the vital organs and then work its way out. So if the weight loss isn't immediately evident, it's simply because there are other things that matter first, and the body will get to the subcutaneous fat later once the vital organs are healed. So lunchtime, so a little green salad would be great, and then I would do a big vegetable soup, big, meaning however much the person wants, but I like to make big pasta vegetable soup, probably from my Russian roots, I don't know, but, carrots, celery, onions, leeks, just throw it all in there. I like garlic and ginger in there too, but that's not everybody's cup of tea with the ginger. And just, cut up nice big chunky pieces, and then with, I like to do 1 part vegetable broth to 1 part water, so it's not so vegetable brothy, and then, you can add whatever you like to make it flavorful. I like to add lots of parsley to my soups, but just a simple, clean vegetable soup that can be eaten chunky, or it can be then put into the blender and made into a puree. And if desired, some of the Acmat crackers would be great, or some sprouted grain toast, toasted really well. The more it's toasted, the easier it's going to go through. Something really simple and clean, just getting back to simplicity, but also hearty. Because, a vegetable soup is hearty, and the sprouted grain toast is hearty. A little butter on the bread is fine, but nothing fancy, nothing that's going to overstimulate the palate or overstimulate the system internally and require blood cleansing and everything. Simple, calming, soothing foods. Could be some steamed vegetables if desired, sauteed with a little butter and garlic and sea salt if desired, but, obviously not, too much salt.
Not too much salt, yeah.
But, it's, if all these concerns that older people have about sodium, it's because they're so used to taking in foods from a can and from a bottle. So if you're getting them fresh food and it's all totally pure, sodium-free, except for the organic salts that are in the vegetables themselves, then adding a little touch of Himalayan sea salt isn't an issue. It's just that if they're eating I guess I shouldn't name labels, but if they're eating a mainstream soup out of a can, then it has to be a low-sodium one because the other ones are going to be crazy with it. I mean, it's a different mentality of thinking. It's like this idea of drinking 8 glasses of water a day. Well, yes, you have to do that if you're eating dehydrated food all day.
Right.
So it goes back to, okay, well, what are we actually – and this is where it's very confusing for older people because they hear all these messages about what they should be doing, but it's in the wrong context. It's in the paradigm of untruth. Jump into the paradigm of truth.
Yeah, they're totally confused.
Yeah, everything changes. So then moving into later in the day, could do a blended salad. That would be a really great move, like throwing into the blender even if it was with a banana. Like I love the green milkshake idea of a couple banana or 2 bananas and a whole bunch of baby spinach.
Yeah.
What do I put in there? Gosh, I'm just forgetting. I put it on the community. Maybe some.
I had one of those today. I had one of those like green, like smoothie things.
Yeah, they're
baby
delicious.
Spinach and a banana, so good.
If you do them right, and then you could do some sprouts, and if you want a little stevia and some ice, and it's usually all you need, and it's delicious.
So good.
Again, simple foods, but that generation didn't take in a lot of simple foods. Starting from birth, it was formula, and then there was just so much. It was the age of the grocery store boom.
Yeah.
And like everything was actually better to eat richer and and
Wonder Bread. I should have mentioned names. Sorry.
Yeah, but it was all it was the advent of all that. It was novelty, so it was embraced, or it was just the cans and the sauces and all that. So keeping it really simple and clean, simple food, and then dinner again, as long as it's well combined and it's not hard to digest. I wouldn't do meats for the simple reason, forget all the other reasons, but it's just too hard to digest. It's tough. So fishes that are flaky and easy to break down are fine. The winter squashes are fantastic. And again, make them tasty. Put a little organic butter and a little touch of sea salt and garlic, anything that you like to make it taste good, but keeping it simple. And what else was I going to mention? But all the baked root vegetables and all the winter squashes are fantastic. Easy to digest is the key, and keeping it vegetable-centric and really simple, and not over cleansing. And it's remarkable what can happen. You have amazing organ turnaround. You just have to give it a chance and give it time. Don't think in terms of a month. Think in terms of a year, and then when you see the progress. You're going to see progress way before then, but when you see that progress, you're just going to continue to live that way, and you're going to feel things turning around. And simultaneously,
you feel energetic, and you can sleep well at night for the first time ever. Yeah.
How many older people are taking sleeping medications and everything? It's one of those things. And remembering that the sleep is the great healer. So if they're sleeping less, or not at all in many cases, or they're taking medications to sleep, they're not getting that deep sleep that's required to regenerate, to clean the blood and let the kidneys do their cleaning. So much needs to be done in those hours. I'm glad you brought that up. And then simultaneously, you want to be doing your meditations. You want to be doing lots of deep stretches. I mean, not beyond what you can do, because deep for one person might just be a very gentle movement because they haven't moved for so long. Getting some more massages, whatever you can do to release the accumulation. If you can find a great Rolfing therapist, who knows how to deal with somebody who's a bit older, because there's going to be as much the Rolfing goes into the what is it called? It's the muscle, the tissues in the muscle. I forget what they're called right now, but it's a very specific kind of work that helps to awaken and release all of the memories that are stored in the body.
Oh, wow.
And it's amazing. I mean, there's almost nothing better for somebody when we think about the accumulation of experience to do than that. But you want to go to someone obviously who's really skilled. But incorporating all of these things, doing the introspection and the recapitulation, think about all the things that you've chosen, all the things you've done in your life, all the relationships you've had. I've written a lot about recapitulation in the blogs. But these are all things. It's a full-time job, but you're doing the only job that really matters, which is, saving your own decay, so that even as we get older, we don't have to decay like that. We don't have to be these rigid, overly accumulated kind of beings. Anyway, I'm carrying on too much, but I think you know what I mean.
No, I totally know exactly what you mean. And it's just, I think that the diet that you're describing is really, like, very appetizing to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wholesome.
Yeah, it's wholesome. And so that's what goes back to us now, starting now, so that we can all age this way and really age in a way that's beneficial for us. This is probably, like, a good thing to note, like, just to take into that, like, and so they won't be that hard later on in life.
Right, and so we won't have to be so, this is only this kind of treading so carefully around the body in order to cleanse it wouldn't be an issue for somebody who has
been doing this for a lifetime.
Exactly, it'll be so much easier. You could be living on fruits and having your crunchy vegetables. Your teeth and your digestive organs will still be in great shape. Everything will be vital. It won't have become downtrodden. It's only because it's also delicate at this stage and so fatigued that we have to design this very kind of careful diet. And just also to remind older people about when they hear about these things that are supposed to be so good for them, like blueberries or salmon or any of these things that come up from time to time, it's not that those things are so good. It's that there are things that won't be agitating. There are things that won't be inflammatory. But we shouldn't need to look at food that way anyway. If you follow this kind of an approach, you're leagues ahead of what's going to be spoken about in the media or what the latest book is going to tell you. But it goes beyond that. You don't need to worry about these little things. And forget the superfoods. The superfoods aren't going to do anything for you as long as you have all this accumulation.
Right.
The simple juices and the release of the accumulation is all you need to do. And not to get sidetracked, you don't buy into any kind of expensive methods. Nothing will work but that. The only things I would say that would be expensive, if you know you have a good enough heart for it, to do would be get infrared sauna. But if you know to check with your doctor first on that note, because it's impossible with you're talking to a totally random group of older people to know what state their health is in. So obviously you speak to your doctor, you see what works best for you. But deep sweating is great. Going for long walks and doing deep stretches, becoming more like a child.
Breathing,
watch your grandkids, see how they move. And, don't move just like them immediately, but get a sense of how opposite. We just shouldn't be moving to the polar extreme, to the opposite side of the pendulum of children. We should be childlike in terms of how we move all our lives. If you look at the yogis and the Tibetans, anyone who follows a sort of sacred life course, they all remain totally flexible. The spine is meant to be as young as your spine is flexible. So keeping that in mind, if everyone kind of just thinks about the state of their spine, even young people listening to this, and this is another thing that thinking about your older self, make sure that you can be flexible every day of your life so that you don't have to start trying to become flexible when you're 65.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Like preventative.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I love what you say about just being with children because, I see like grandparents, most grandparents are so happy to be around their grandchildren. They like live and breathe for them. And, if some of the people that are listening to these audios, if you don't have children, you don't have grandchildren, it's okay too. Like go to a park and observe how children are playing and just, breathe in that energy of youthfulness around you. That's important too.
Yeah.
To be in that energy of youth. Get out. I always tell my father's 90 years old, and, a lot of times when he comes to visit, he's like very much, he gets into these quiet spaces where he needs quiet, which I respect, but sometimes I'll push him to come into the playroom and to see the kids playing and being that, that energy of like animation. And I see a change in his body, and he resists it at first. He's like, no, it's too loud for me, too much for me. Those are the typical things that I hear my father says, too loud, too much. I'm like, what? No, and then I see it in his body. His body actually begins to just relax when he is in this environment of, chaotic play.
Yeah.
So, I mean, not for hours on end. I don't make him stay there forever, but just for a little while, just to get him into that mode.
Well, and it also brings to mind this regenerating of the mind. A woman I'm thinking of who's in her 90s, and she's amazing. She is quick as a whip. I mean, she's quicker than any young person I know. Mm-hmm. And she has had her interests her whole life. She's always had. She reads. She just has a stack of books by her bed every night. She reads everything that she's interested in. She has several topics that she can't get enough of on human personality. All these different. I can't really explain it, but it's a whole category of interest that she has.
Yeah.
From astrology to personality types and handwriting analysis and all this stuff. And she's just been pursuing this her whole life. And so now she's never let the porch light go dim. She's always been ready for the next thing. And I think that's kept her so young. And she's totally independent. I see her running around the streets of New York and going to the health food store. And she's, but the people I know who've achieved great states of health into their 90s and beyond have all been, there are a few things that they all do, and they are all avid readers and have avid interests. Even if they don't have a lot of family, they have a lot of friends, and they have connections. They all care about their sleep. They all have specific regimens that they stick to because they know themselves well. And, even if they seem extreme, they do them anyway. They don't go with the norms. They're usually non-drinkers, or if they do drink, it's very occasional. But they have standards that they really stick to in their lives, and they keep living. Their heart and their mind is just ready every day for the next thing.
Mhm. It's like the standard of self-care, and because no matter you can juice and you can do all this type of eat all these types of vegetables and go the extra mile, but if you're not taking care of your mind, then you're not in some sort of a creative, happy flow or state of peace in your mind, then it's what's it all for really? One has to kind of complement the other. So I think that's so important too. And I see, even with myself, just to really broaden my interests a lot, because like I said before, I'm in my mid-30s now, and my interests are spirituality. I love all these things, but the other day I was like, I'm going to pick up a fiction book. I have not read a fiction book in a really long time, and I really believe that this is important for my mind right now to have to mix it up a little bit. And I did. I read a wonderful book, and I've been asking a lot of my friends who have book clubs and stuff like that, to recommend other fiction books for me, so that alongside of my spiritual and in reading about all this, just about nutrition, about food, about lifestyle, whatever. In addition to that, reading something different, reading some fiction books, so that this way, my mind can be just more broad. Yeah. And it's been really cool. I see a difference in my creativity, just broadening that up a little bit, mixing it up a little bit.
Yeah, and it's a good point. I think the creativity is the word is the big thing. I think if we're taking up paintbrushes to life, literally or figuratively, when we're at that stage in our lives, we will be rocking. We'll be fine.
Totally.
If we can still have a love for music and dance, and at any time, I think, even as young people, if things seem to be getting boring, we better look at ourselves and say, well, why? Why are we must be getting boring?
Yeah. Yeah. The other day I started playing tennis with my friend. We just picked up, she has a tennis court in her house. We picked up rackets. We were both barefoot. And we had so much fun because it was so out of the ordinary for us to do this.
It's great.
And it was wonderful. All those years of lessons that my parents paid for really paid off, because we got into a nice little game of it, and it was fun. We have to have fun.
Yeah. I'm gonna come out and play tennis with you.
Yeah, you have to. Or just sometimes I'll ride my bike, or I'll do something just completely and utterly different than I usually do.
Yeah.
Just to spice it up.
Yeah.
Life is supposed to be fun, and then it usually follows by lots of other fun stuff that comes my way. Because it's almost like you open a door to it, And I think that that's what happens when we get a little bit older, that, you know, you take the first step, maybe somebody invites you to go play bridge, or maybe someone goes and invites you to lunch and you say yes, as opposed to just staying home, then you're opening yourself up to so many other possibilities, getting out of your own head.
Yeah. And don't you think, Macha, that we need to sort of just completely revise the way we culturally allow older people to be treated, and that just the way they're treated like medicated cattle, the way they're sent to these homes. I think a lot of that stems from the lack of integrity in families, and how those people who are sent off from their families, maybe they weren't. It doesn't always happen this way, but there was a trend from the 60s onward to toward latchkey kids, and then of course there was a lot more divorce. Not that isn't important for a lot of people, but just that we became very casual with the family unit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so kids weren't nurtured and protected by their parents. So when those kids grew up, they didn't really feel an allegiance to care for their parents. And we have to break that cycle. We have to bring back the unity and the sacredness of families. And when I say families, I don't just mean immediate families. I mean communal families. All of us. We just have to honor life so much more, so that we don't think it's okay to either send your kids off in a direction that's not connected to anything meaningful, so that they feel lost, and we don't feel that it's okay to send the elderly off in a way that they're not cared for. Maybe they were misguided, and maybe they made choices and now things have wound up the way they are because because the culture they accepted is the culture that is now putting them in these homes and giving them this medication, and there has to be some responsibility taken for that by them.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
It's like we've seen that doesn't work. Enough of that. We have to care about this. Just because we don't see it every day, like we don't see handicapped people every day necessarily, and we don't see mentally ill people every day, but they're there, and it all really just matters so much. We have to value human life and all these stages so much more.
Yeah. Well, I would say that just by us, by even just those who are in your community and who are starting these life force families and who have these life force families, have to start thinking about that. Are you raising your children to be nurturing? Are you nurturing your children? Is that important? Yesterday I was having, I had heard some sad news, and my children came in and they saw me cry, and they asked me what was wrong, and I said, Mommy's a little sad right now. Mommy's okay. Mommy's just a little sad. And they wrapped their arms around me and they hugged me. And that was a really beautiful moment. And of course, I hugged them right back. And I'm like, oh, this is so nice. You are such nice people and so sweet. Trying not to make them think that they needed to take care of me, but that I was honoring that they recognized that I was in pain and that they were there for me and just giving me what they could was a beautiful moment. So, seeing that, are your children nurturing? Are you nurturing to your children? Like, what's going on there? So, yeah, I think it's a very important thing to note, especially while we're this age. What type of environment are we creating? Yeah, because it's going to affect us in the long run. Not that I'm suggesting, treat your children well so that they can treat you better when you're older.
No, but I think losing the threads that actually is a reality, is a huge mistake. So we have to bring it back to the foreground. Not because we want to serve ourselves, because we know that that's what works. That's what's necessary. That's the only way for everybody to be needed. And then when you have vital elders who've raised these great children, they've come into so much wisdom on themselves, and then they can, they become leaders in the community, and they don't become disposable, kind of forgotten folks. Yep,
absolutely. So, and we could start now. We can start by when you see an elderly person, smiling at them, asking how their day is, what's engaging them in conversation. So many times they take this back seat. The holidays are coming up. Look around and see what the elderly people in your family are doing. If they're sitting in the back, bring them in, engage them, talk to them.
Yeah,
you could start now to really reframe it. And probably, you're going to find that they have such amazing wisdom to give you and such amazing stories. You know, I always learned so much, like from my dad about, you know, World War II and all these different things. And, you know, he tells me these stories over and over again sometimes, but he tells them to me and I listen. And they're pearls, you know. And my father saw Mussolini. How cool is that? Not that I would ever want to see Mussolini, but he did. And so there's some beautiful things that we can gather if we just change our minds a little bit.
And it weakens that youth worshiping kind of paradigm too. It dismantles it.
Right.
You know, when we honor them, and even if they're feeling a little sort of unimportant or disposable, or because the you know, they've been made to feel that way by the culture. If we refuse to accept that and we pull them out of it and pull, like you said, pull the gems out, pull the pearls out, we can weaken that paradigm where the you know, it's only the young, powerful, wealthy that matter.
Right. Because when we do that, when we engage them, we're honoring our inner elder inside of us, and we're creating this bond, this beautiful bond. Because otherwise, we're just keeping ourselves separate, separate from, you know, from I don't know what, just separate from God, separate from love. So we have to learn how to really unite that.
Yeah. Well, this has been a full spectrum, but it all has a piece in the giant puzzle of this stage of life, and
yes.
I think the people who are listening to it will get that.
And I think that you've given some really amazing tips on just even on a day in the life of what we can start to suggest to people around us to really start implementing in their life right now.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I think it can be a lot easier than people think, and it definitely should. The approach is just not to get caught up in things that seem complicated, because it really needs to be smooth, simple, digestible, and real.
Yes.
It just needs to be from the source, real.
Oh, well, thank you so much. This was great.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Masha.
And thank you, everybody, for listening. So we'll be back again with another topic. Yeah.
Send in questions, because we might do a part 2 of this. I could easily see this being one of those topics that, you know, we've only scratched the surface on.
Yes, I would really like to talk even more like just about self-image and, you know, just learning how to accept things, you know, like we talked briefly when we were discussing this audio, just about like what happens when people around you stop looking at you in a certain way, you know, what can that do to the psyche as you grow older? So there's definitely like a part 2 conversation of this.
Yeah, I'll be interested in people's thoughts.
Yes.
Great. Okay, everyone, thank you for listening.
Thank
Masha,
you.
thanks again.
Bye, Natalia.
Okay,
bye-bye.
bye.